Hi there, fully online crew, section 14. Greet you on March 1st, and I've decided to try to give you just a little bit of a different background, right? Forgive me, a lot of our work together has been done with me in that study because it's comfy in there and it's easy to control the light, unlike out here in my favorite place, my glass porch. Let's just have something a little bit different this time out. A couple of small things. And I better get this done efficiently because I just reloaded this stove for the night. And it is going to get pretty warm in a little while. And no one likes a sweaty English major, so let's keep moving here. Rough day, weather-wise. I actually made it to the college, along with many of my students. I told everybody today, I'm not going to mark anyone absent. Nobody should be marked absent or punished for not being as foolhardy as I was this morning. I undertook one of the most perilous treks to my college ever, and particularly the secondary roads down here in Stearns County were really, really bad. You don't need a weather report tonight. Also like to report too, my medallion hunt concluded today in day 3, and it was found in the middle of the afternoon, a little bit later than I thought it would be made because I thought it was really fairly obvious with the clues. And I don't know if you watched any of the vids, you would have had to check email. But what's important to me is that this time out, I decided to honor a particular type of student that I've been serving only at Central Lakes College in the last 13 years, and that's veterans. You know, I had 2 or 3 places where I thought I would put the medallion, and then this young man, this guy, what a sweet kid this guy is. This is Cy Johnson. He's one of my Staples Motley students. He's in your sister class. And as I was, kind of stewing about where to put the medallion, you got to put it in a public place. You can't put it in an office or a classroom. I was reading his journal recently, and I hit a page in which he told me how much he loves this country. And further, how proud he is that he's going to be a 4th-generation naval cadet starting this summer when he sort of ships out, so to speak. And when I hit that sentence, when I hit that idea about his pride, and I thought of all of the wonderful veterans I've served in my 13-year career at CLC, some amazing men and women, some of whom have come home harmed from places where they were in harm's way, like Iraq or Afghanistan. And I've witnessed their suffering and their prose. And anyway, that's just sort of a very serious and solemn nod to all the veterans at the college. Any given year we have 300 or 400, and they are out there defending my academic pontoon hippie lifestyle. I got a poem for you and a poet that I want to name, and I basically only have one lesson today. And I don't even think I need this book because I've got a story I want to tell you and a concept I want to put before you that is absolutely crucial for argumentation. And now I'm thinking about your persuasive paper or any moment in your life where you need to be influential. So really 2 things today after my blather here. I've got a poem and that needs a little bit of setup. And we're going to talk about, essentially today, the difference between essentials and non-essentials. It'll seem abstract and strange and like, what is he even talking about? And then I'm going to try to make it real with a story. I love being up in the clouds, thinking abstract thoughts. It's just my nature. But I have found in the years, and you've seen it, I hope, that if you gear things down for people and put it in the form of narrative and see real-world application, whatever it is, we're trying to figure out here, you can get your head around it. And not only that, stories have a way of sticking with us. So here's the gaze of Joy Harjo. She is Indigenous, and I'm so proud to be serving a couple of Indigenous students right now, Tylee and Megan Merrill from the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe. I keep talking about them. And I'm holding, the project was basically this. It was, the Joy Harjo project is one of the most complicated and challenging projects of my poet hosting career. And the reading wasn't the challenging part of it. Why? Because it was virtual. It was just me sitting in my office in the fall of 2020, trying to keep my series going. She was reading from Oklahoma. I had videography all masked up, right, outside my office to make me look good. And it was reasonably satisfying to meet her that way. And I looked today, and the poetry reading has over 1,000 views. So that's one of the good things, right? People can still watch and visit the poetry reading and encounter the poet and the poetry somehow. My real big project that year was to distribute her book, An American Sunrise. I should try to give you a better look at this. This is a beautiful hardcover book. And with the help of the Olseth Family Foundation, I got 1,200 brand new copies of this from Norton. And John Olseth and I down at Riverline College, my new best friend, we shipped these out to 1,200 kids at 18 different high schools across Minnesota, as I always say, from Red Wing all the way up to Red Lake. And I'm hoping, if I get my big State Arts Board grant this month for my fall project, one of my fall projects, I'm hoping to have an even bigger book project, because that's increasingly what the series is about. Getting poetry books into the hands, especially of young people, although everyone's obviously included. So, what I want to talk to you about for a while today is the idea that I take from Book 1 of Aristotle's Rhetoric. In Book 1, Aristotle proclaims, when you are arguing, this is rough paraphrase, I haven't looked at it in a while, though I know the book very, very well. It's a 300-page mess, and I especially love Book 1 because it sort of lays out rhetorical theory for us. Aristotle says, when you're arguing, argue only the essential facts of any case. Now that makes sense, right? Why wouldn't you just stick to the facts if you have facts? I'll repeat that idea. Only argue the essential facts of any case. And I believe that, and it's true. But then, with this next sentence he pulls the trigger on, he just sort of leaves this opening. And I'm roughly paraphrasing. The next sentence runs roughly, well, you know, once in a while, you might need to use non-essential arguments. So it's like, okay, Aristotle, you laid down like this absolute law, and then you just open up a kind of doorway that enables other ways for us to argue and persuade. So I have a story that I want to tell you that illustrates this. We are all trying to be virtuous people. I know this. We're all trying to be good. But we have a little thing in our human hearts called concupiscence, which, and I don't want to get all theological on you, but in other words, once in a while we want to misbehave. It's getting a little warmer now. And I want to tell you a story about how I misbehaved as a writer, a formative experience of mine that I had when I was about 18 years old. And it will bring to light this concept for you, because non-essentials are super tempting. Some of them work, some of them help. Some of them are neutral in nature, and non-essentials can also be absolutely destructive, okay? So let's go back in time a little bit. In the year 1978, there was a year that I had this idea that I was going to be a journalist. And I'm glad I didn't go up that road, because journalism is dying fast. Newspapers are just vanishing. Although I have had students go off and make a successful living at it, including Michael Beckel. He's on Politico constantly. So, but when I was a kid, I thought, this is what I want to do with my life. I'm going to try to make the world a better place by telling stories, the truth of stories, and telling the truth of people's stories. And I remember my early efforts at doing that. And how's this for unethical? Quick story. My dad, story within a story. My dad was a small-town politician when I was a kid in the Champlin-Anoka area. And he was, for a while, he was the chairman of the school board, District 11. Was the biggest, forgive those little tings once in a while. He was the a chair of the biggest school board in the entire state of Minnesota. And one night I got a little bit curious about what was in his suitcase for that deal. And for some reason I was in the house alone. And I went into that suitcase and, kind of rifled his gear pretty quickly. I found a salary scale for all the coaches in 1978, all the coaches, male and female, in District 11. It was kind of like this secret file. I took one look at it and I went, well, look at this. All the women are making thousands of dollars less than their male counterparts, right? So the women's softball coach was getting paid nowhere near what the baseball coach was. I'd be exaggerating if I told you I stole it. What I really did was I took a Polaroid swinger. You possibly seen them in a museum. I took a Polaroid picture of it and put it in the glove compartment of my old Volkswagen Super Beetle. And I wrote an inflammatory, excoriating editorial about how unjust that was. And it blew the whole town up. And I did some good, even though I sort of cheated a little bit. All the salaries of the women coaches in that vast district, junior high and high school, they were sent north for equivalency's sake. So here's the real story I want to tell you. That year, I learned something about my abilities with language. And this is why I had you write a literacy narrative, right? Narrative. It's really important for us to think back on the early moments that we had becoming readers and writers. And we've all had them. Some of them have been hard and painful even, and some of them are wonderful. And just pretty much everything that happened to me as a writer, my senior year in high school when I was 17 and turned 18 in November of that year, were absolutely fantastic. I figured out pretty quickly that I had some talent with language, that I had some talent with argumentation. And at the largest, what was then the largest high school in the state of Minnesota, I was made the editorial editor, which meant that every 2 weeks when the Anoka High came out, whatever I was thinking about was on the first page. And in January of that year, whatever the topic was in my head, you would read about it if you cared to read about it. And something rather dramatic happened at Anoka Senior High in January of 1978. 3 boys, 2 of them friends of mine, one of the boys I didn't know. I've told this story so many times. It works, that's why I tell it. 3 friends of mine, three boys, 2 friends of mine, Danny Sherman and Mike Marcotte, they decided that they would streak a basketball game on Friday night. And the game was between Blaine and Anoka Senior High. I'll give you a little picture of it here. Monster high school. I hear it's recently been unbelievably rejuvenated and refabbed. And I learned that from a student of mine named Brennan, who's an Anoka guy like me. He also was an Anoka tornado. So anyway, they decided they're going to streak a basketball game. They had a plan. The plan was that they would go out during the school day and punch a little hole through that big curtain on on each side of the court so the balls wouldn't go off into the darkness. Huge field house. They punched a hole through that curtain with a Bic pen so they could see through it. Because that night, when they had their uniforms on, or off, as you would put it, tennis shoes and ski masks with the little frayed holes, they wanted to be able to look through that hole and make sure that they were going to streak the game while the free throw was being shot. They didn't want to try to do it corner to corner when the melee of the game was going on. So, and I'm not there. I was not there. I'm not embarrassed to report to you that I was at a Ted Nugent contest because that dude could play guitar. He's a little bit of a different man now, but boy, could he play. So I'm at Ted Nugent. This is happening in Anoka, Minnesota, 20 miles north of where I was at the St. Paul Civic Center. And they had a plan. The plan was run from one corner to the other, then get up 2 long flights of stairs and get out 2 sets of double doors into a 20 below night and hopefully escape with a warm getaway car that was idling on the sidewalk. So they go for it, okay? They absolutely go for it. They start running, the crowd goes wild, many hundreds of people there. Why did we like streaking in those days? It's so stupid. Jeepers, it's extra stupid. Well, we loved it then, and people just went wild. They were on their feet and they were cheering. And at first things were going okay. They executed the streak, they got up the stairs, or were heading up the stairs, and they ran into a problem. There was an administrator there named Groth, David C. Groth. He was the vice principal and the dean of conduct. Again, for a very large high school. He was there. Every kid knew it. He probably knew it was going to happen too, and he was up in the pavilion watching the game. When they headed up the stairs, he bolted to the right in his suit with his street shoes with tassels. And the first 2 boys, the boy whose name I cannot remember, got out the door along with my friend Mike Marcotte and Danny Sherman. Unfortunately, was shoestring tackled by Mr. Groth on the ice, right on the sidewalk, and he was not going to let go for anything. Still, my friend, I'm still in contact with Mike Marcotte. He looked back, thought the obvious, Danny's down, and he did something that he should not have done. He ran back and he punched Mr. Groth in the head once, and then he punched him in the face. So he broke his glasses, bloodied his nose, but Mr. Groth did not let go. Mike Marcotte fled the scene of the crimes. And they brought Danny in, and they demasked him. We put this puffy coat around him. And when the mask came off, the whole town was like, are you kidding me? Danny Sherman? A state champion in gymnastics. He was a ring guy. He was the president of the National Honor Society. He was just a straight A kid. He was an A kid. And it's always the finest kid in the school that's going to pull crap like this. And I'm sure by 9 o'clock or so, Danny sang like a bird. And that was it. The school threw the book at them. They were kicked out of school for 2 weeks. They were kicked out of their sports. Every academic honor possibly was stripped from them. And criminal charges were filed in Hennepin County Court. Anoka Senior High was and still is a very serious place. And Anyway, it was trouble. So all my friends are like, all right, you got to do something. You got to write something about this. Okay, you come up with an idea there. I sat down at my manual typewriter. I remember this in my childhood bedroom, and I had a problem. I didn't even know Aristotelian rhetoric. None of it had even been put before me in any school, in any class. But look at the problem I had. Remember the definition, too, of rhetoric. Rhetoric is the art of discovering, in any case, the available means of persuasion. What are the essential facts? The essential facts are is that they streaked a basketball game and punched an administrator in the head. And I started writing, thinking, okay, what's the problem? Here's the deal. I'll admit that this happened. Oh, and by the way, I'm writing to 3,000 kids at a school, and I'm also writing to an entire town, more or less. We printed another 3,000 copies for Anoka. So I'm more or less addressing a community. And here's what I did. At first I said, okay, yes, this happened. But they're kids. They're kids. We are kids, and we are impulsive. Yes, some things happen that should not have happened, but young people do stuff like that. And then in the middle of the essay, I made kind of a turn. And the turn was, yes, some consequences should happen. They should be punished to some degree, but it's a question of a scale, right? I said, aren't we taking it a little too far? Are we really going to kick them out of every sport they've been in their across their lives? Are we going to remove them from the National Honor Society? Are we going to rig it so they can't even go to college or a university next year? We got to dial this back. And I had a pretty good sentence or a pretty good idea. And my idea was, it was in the form of a question, are we going to punish these future men for something they did when they were boys? And how am I doing? Pretty good, right? And I'm carrying the day and I'm carrying the day. And then I got near the end of it, and I thought to myself, I think I'm going to write something satirical. And I did, pretty much assuming that my journalism teacher, Mrs. Jorison, Kathleen Jorison, who I'm still friends with on Facebook, I thought she would yank that for sure. She didn't. She let the following sentence fly near the end. I believe, as a community, we should ask ourselves one essential question. What possessed Mr. Growth to chase 3 naked boys into that dark, cold night? Oh, did it hit the fan. When that paper came out, my friends went, the school went absolutely wild. So many of my friends that day were high-fiving me, saying, you're awesome, that was awesome. I remember a moment where I was standing in the main commons, looking into the lunchroom where kids were lined up, hundreds of them, to buy the newspaper and go straight to that page so they could read it and laugh. And I was feeling pretty good about myself, and I'm starting to realize, you know what? If you can write, you have a kind of power. I didn't realize that we all have an awesome, solemn responsibility to use language responsibly. But my kid brain told me to goof up a little bit, and boy did I ever. Middle of the day, things went really, really south. Mr. Growth's daughter accosted me in the hallway, ran up to me, tears flowing down her cheeks. She was yelling at me, saying, my dad is not a homosexual. I said, I know he's not. You're proof of that, okay? I was being satirical, and satire is protected speech even when the audience doesn't get it. And I was hauled into the office, and they were yelling at me, Mr. Growth and the principal, Art C. Dussel. They were like, what kind of journalist are you? You admitted that you weren't even there. I'm like, excuse me. It was a very public event, and by the way, I've got photographs. So when they found out I had photographs, that was it. They're like, you're giving us those. Those are evidence. And I had hidden them. I went and hid them in my friend Joe Niedenfear's locker. In the middle of that day, the principal came to get me out of physical science that I was en route to flunking. And he and 2 Hennepin County sheriffs took me down the hallway, put me in a classroom that was dark, wasn't even being used. And they're like, they popped open their coats and like, all right, where are the photographs? Trying to scare me. They even showed me their gun. I'm like, I'm not talking to you until I talk to my journalism advisor. And my journalism advisor, she turned into a little bulldog. And pretty quickly, we had a court case in Hennepin County about whether or not a junior journalist like me could own those photographs. I'd be exaggerating if it said it was decided in my favor by a jury. It was just a judge that decided, no, these are your photographs. And that's why, to this minute, there is a gigantic black and white photograph of those 3 naked boys hanging in the basement of Mike Marcotte's house in Coon Rapids. The photograph is above his pool table. I've seen it many times. And the boys are blowing by the Blaine cheerleaders, and on every cheerleader's face, you can see a completely different expression. One of the girls looked just delighted. One looked horrified. One was averting their gaze. It was just classic. I wanted to put the photograph in with the article and put the little black X's over their butts, but that was a little too far for Miss Jorson, so we had kind of a crap drawing depicting it. So I hope you get this is all before you, very obviously. I used a non-essential that was destructive. I didn't have to do that. I hit a little button called homophobia on a small town in 1978, punched it through the control panel all the way into the floor, and when I see you again tomorrow with my next video, we're going to be talking about non-essentials, another story, kind of a companion mirror story, that I think does a pretty decent job of putting before us not right rhetoric, not wrong rhetoric, but a kind of a gray rhetoric, a rhetoric that's in between. And I want you to scratch your head. Oh, well, let's get there when we get there. The roads are still pretty bad. Stay safe and be well. I love you guys. Oh, don't get a fireplace someday. Get a wood stove. Fireplaces just take heat out of the house. They're nothing but trouble. Get yourself a high-quality wood stove. There's nothing like reading poetry by a wonderful wood stove full of oak. Free thoughts from Jeff Johnson. Peace out.
A member of the Muskogee tribe, Miss Joy Harjo.
Thank you. This poem is a poem to get rid of fear, and it works. I have before and after pictures. I release you, my beautiful and terrible fear. I release you. You were my beloved and hated twin, but now I don't know you as myself. I release you with all the pain I would know at the death of my children. You are not my blood anymore. I give you back to the soldiers who burned down my home, beheaded my children, raped and sodomized my brothers and sisters. I give you back to those who stole the food from our plates when we were starving. I release you, fear, because you were born, and I was born with eyes that can never close. I release you. I release you. I release you. I release you. I am not afraid to be angry. I am not afraid to rejoice. I am not afraid to be hungry. I am not afraid to be full. I am not afraid to be black. I am not afraid to be white. I am not afraid to be hated. I am not afraid to be loved, to be loved, to be loved. Fear. Oh, you have choked me, but I gave you the leash. You have gutted me, but I gave you the knife. You have devoured me, but I laid myself across the fire. I take myself back, fear. You are not my shadow any longer. I won't hold you in my hands. You can't live in my eyes, my ears, my voice, my belly, or my heart. My heart, my heart, my heart, my heart, my heart, my heart, my heart. Come here, fear. I am alive. And you are so afraid of dying.